Hello and welcome to another 30-Minute Thursday. My name is Amit. It is 2 p.m. in the rapidly becoming autumn Pacific Northwest, and we are live on Facebook. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind schedule, guys. It's technical stuff. It's always technical stuff with me, but we're live and it's so nice to see you guys. I hope everyone's doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Hope you're staying healthy. Hope you're staying sane. Very important to stay sane in what appears to be a more and more insane world. What can I tell you? It's just the hits keep on coming. And I apologize, my phone, which I have silenced, does not respond. And so it's vibrating and it's beeping and it's a little bit intrusive, like all the other technology in our lives. It can be very, very helpful right up until the point it becomes very annoying and intrusive. And for that, I apologize. If you hear things vibrating, bing, bing, that's my phone. I am, knock on wood, staying super busy in this very strange market time. And what can I say? It's good to be busy. It's good to be engaged. It's good to be working and doing things. And I hope you guys are similarly staying engaged and taking care of the things that are pressing for you. That said, I promoted this 30-Minute Thursday with information about what's happening tomorrow, which is PCE Day. PCE is short for Personal Consumption Expenditures. This is a measure of inflation. It's the Fed's favorite measure of inflation. And tomorrow we're going to get the results for August of 2023. So this is kind of delayed. I mean, we're almost into October already. And if you live in the Pacific Northwest and you got hammered by that rain yesterday, you know that autumn is definitely coming. But we are getting the information from August. So this is a bit of a delay, but personal consumption expenditures, very similar to CPI, which is Consumer Price Index, but a slightly different weighting. So what they do, when I say weighting, it's not like WAIT weighting, where you're like sitting in a waiting room. It's weighting, WEIGHT. So we're talking about how much does each of these values contribute to the total amount of the inflation reading. And so CPI, Consumer Price Index, has a different ranking or weighting system than PCE, Personal Consumption Expenditures. Lots and lots of three-letter acronyms here. And so it's going to be a slightly different sort of reading than we had a couple of weeks ago when Consumer Price Index came out for the month of August. Also, they're always a month behind. And you know, the long and the short of it is that there's an expectation that we will see inflation tick upward as expressed by the PCE, just like we did when CPI came out a couple of weeks ago. It showed that inflation was ticking upward a little bit. And that's not unexpected. It's certainly not welcome, but it's not unexpected because things do not go straight down or straight up. Typically, right? I mean, there are certain sorts of recalibrations. It goes up, it comes down, it goes up, it comes down. And the same thing with these inflation readings. Now, the things that go into the inflation readings, one of the big components is shelter or rent costs. And for the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, that makes up almost 44% of the total reading. So that's a pretty heavy weight by comparison. The PCE only takes, I believe it's 27% weighting on the cost of rent and shelter. So it's definitely going to have a different reading. But what's really moving these numbers right now, what's really pushing things in a negative way is the cost of energy, the cost of gas, and the cost of food. And if you guys drive and if you guys eat, I think most of us do both. I think that you've experienced that. I filled up my car just yesterday, in fact, and it's a shock. Now, Washington State has even a slightly added sort of problem. I was going to say benefit, but it's not a benefit. We have very, very high gas taxes here in Washington State. That is our elected class and kind of the policies that they've set recently, the last 2 or 3 months. And that's contributing to a lot of pain at the pump. And I experienced that I imagine you guys experience that as well. I mean, everybody needs to drive and everybody needs to pay for energy one way or the other. The talk about, electric cars and renewable resources and all that, that's great. And that's a conversation for another time. I'm happy to have that conversation. I like Elon Musk. There's plenty of Tesla drivers in and around where I live and where I work. But as far as actually today and the rate of inflation and where we stand right now in real time, the cost of gas is just becoming burdensome for most people, and it's also impacting the inflation readings. So the Fed, conveniently enough, and these institutions, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's the government entity that houses all of these economists and houses all of these data gathering individuals, they break out two different numbers for both the PCE, which is personal consumption expenditures, and the CPI, which is consumer price index. They break these two out, and they have the headline number, and then they have the core number. And the core number takes out the gas and gas and energy and food prices. They eliminate that category of expense, because in the Fed's mentality, nothing they do with regard to interest rates and monetary policy, nothing they do, nothing in their bag of tricks or in their toolbox or whatever it is going to stop you and me from eating or from driving. It's a necessity of life, especially the eating part. Like maybe back in the day when we were all working from home a few years ago and there was nothing open and there was no consumption or no going out, yeah, maybe you could not drive as much. But nowadays, there's no escaping driving, right? I mean, we need fuel to drive and we need to drive to survive. And so the Fed, in their wisdom as bureaucrats and technocrats and economists and whatnot, have kind of eliminated these two components, which seem to be increasing in cost much higher than everything else. They've eliminated that from one of the readings. And so they are looking at the core reading as opposed to the headline reading as a way of gauging how good their policies are with interest rate hikes and everything else, because the core, they feel that they can impact more, right? They feel like, okay, if we make things so expensive or if things become so hard to finance, because credit card interest rates now are what, above 25%, maybe going even higher. I don't even know where they are at this point, but if they make it so expensive that people don't want to spend that money, then in general, people are going to say, I don't need to buy new clothes this year. I don't need to buy a new TV this year. I don't need to buy a new car or a used car this year. We don't have to travel for vacation this year. We can stay at home and go hiking or camping or whatever the case may be. And so the Fed, in their plans and in their attempts to shape human behavior by the cost of money, which is what they're doing right now, they can shape our behavior on things represented in the core of the inflation readings. They cannot shape our behavior in the cost of food and energy as far as they think. I think they can. I think that we're seeing things to a certain degree, and I believe that our politicians are hoping that they can shape people's buying decisions and people's driving decisions by making gas, for this example, so expensive that people think, maybe I'll take public transportation, or maybe I just won't drive that far, or maybe I'll find somebody with whom to carpool. And I believe in their heart of hearts, our elected officials are using tax policy and pushing these sorts of efforts to create changes in behaviors for their energy policies. Now, whether or not you agree with that, that's a whole nother conversation. And I don't want to talk about the politics of it. I want to talk about the economics of it. The economics of it are that with rising food prices, with rising gas prices, what the Fed is saying on the core readings and how they're doing with their efforts to contain inflation and put it back in the box, that's in their purview, that's in their world. But what you and I experience as normal human beings, not working for the government, not involved in an industry like the government where you're always employed, you're always seeing cost of living adjustments, it's okay for them. But for us, the cost of food is going up. The cost of gas is going up. And I know more and more people are restraining and restricting what they spend their money on, even on food, to have a better price point. What that looks like in general is maybe they're buying fewer steaks and more hamburgers, as an example, right? Or they're not going out to eat as much as they would have in times when things were a little bit more affordable, because they want to make that dollar last and stretch further. So, it's a weird sort of experiment, if you will, or a conversation to talk about what can be impacted by monetary policy and what isn't impacted. For the Fed to suggest that their rate hikes and their efforts to contain inflation, that's not going to be impactful on energy and on food usage, I think is a little bit of a misstatement. I think in the real world, where you and I live and where you and I fill up our cars with gas and fill up our refrigerators with food, the cost of these things does make a difference. And what you spend your money on is impacted by how much it costs to pay for things and how much it costs, if you don't have the money in your account, to carry that credit card balance on your back when interest rates keep going up and up and up. So it is impactful, and we'll see what happens. That's tomorrow. That's going to be a big one, and the expectations are to see the headline number at least go up, because gas and food prices are rising. And frankly, anyone who doesn't think that has an impact on the mentality of the consumer, as well as the spending habits and everything else, I think they're living in a very insulated bubble, which is where our political class and bureaucratic class tends to live. So we'll see. Beyond that, next week, I'm trying to do the math on this. Yeah, I believe it'll be next week. We're going to get unemployment readings. That's a big number that we're looking for here. The Fed has said time and again, and they continue to say time and again, that they need to see higher rates of unemployment, meaning they need to see people lose their jobs. Let's cut out the bureaucratic kind of naivete and say it like it is. They want to see people unemployed. They want to see people afraid that they're going to be unemployed, because that means that they're not going to be asking for raises. That means that they're not going to be asking for bonuses. That means that they're not going to be shifting jobs from one place to another place that's offering to pay them more. They want fear in the workplace, fear in the employment market, because when employees are fearful about conditions, they are less they require less money. Basically, if you're afraid that they're laying people off and they come up to you and say, you know what, the good news is you're not going to lose your job. Bad news is you're not going to get the bonus that you got last year. When there's fear and you see other people in your company losing their jobs, you're happy that at least you're not among those people. And so the idea is that they want to create more unemployment, and by doing that, fewer people will have as much money. Let me restate that. By creating more unemployment, people will have less money in general. And when they have less money in general, as the bureaucratic class thinks, they can control and manipulate and guide where we spend our money and how we spend our money. And in doing that, they are trying to use that lever or push those buttons to bring down the rate of inflation. That's what's going on. So in October 6th, I believe it is, which is my dad's birthday. He turns 80, which is awesome. We're going to see that number. And look, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what I'm rooting for here. It's like two of my favorite teams playing against one another. I don't have a good option for who to cheer for. I don't want to see people lose their jobs. I don't want to see people in economic distress. I don't want to see people stressed and pressed like what the Fed is trying to do. And at the same time, until they see that, they're just going to keep pushing those buttons and keep moving things until they get what they want. And it's a terrible place to find ourselves, guys. I don't have anything good to say about that. I think it's dastardly. I think it's very, very problematic what the Fed has done and what the Fed continues to do. And I've said it time and again, as I do my 30-minute Thursdays and my live broadcasts, that all of this, or much of this, is inflicted by the Fed. Yeah, they're not the only culprits. They're the ones that are trying to clean up the mess and figure out how to pay for it. The real culprits are our elected officials on this side of the aisle and that side of the aisle, and all of them combined. They're all guilty of spending way more money than we have. Let me give you an idea of what that means. Basically, in June of this past summer, there was a debt ceiling crisis. I don't know if y'all remember that, but basically, our government has a self-imposed cap on how much debt we can go into. And it's a pretty high cap. It's not like, oh, kudos to you guys, you're so restrained. No, it's a pretty high cap. And every year around budget time, we get to this problem where the politicians just basically butt heads about how much we're going to spend, how much we're not going to spend, and we have to stay within the cap, and so on and so forth. Well, in June of this past summer, they decided to remove the cap. Let's solve the problem by taking the restrictions off. And they said they put the restrictions on hold until 2025. Which is awesome. So through the next election cycle, I mean, you can read this like clockwork. And again, this is not about your favorite politician or my favorite politician or your political agenda or my political agenda. This is about our country's financial well-being. Just that simple. We all have ideas about how we can spend things and how we shouldn't spend things. Those things we can debate. But the fact of the matter is that since June, so we're talking about June to July, July to August, August to September, in 3 months, we have added $1 trillion of new debt to what we owe, to whoever it is that is financing our debt. So now we owe somewhere in the order of $33 trillion to investors, to the world, to the Chinese government, to the Japanese government, to whoever buys our IOUs. And that last trillion came on board basically in 3 months. And it's unrestrained. And so why I share all this is because whatever the Fed is doing and whatever pain you and I are feeling, whether it's food prices or gas prices, or we're not taking vacations, or we're afraid for our jobs, or whatever it is, the only real way that inflation happens, honest to goodness conversation here, the only real way it happens is when government either borrows money or prints money. More money than we had. That's it. There's no other way. I can charge an extra 10 cents for my widget that I'm selling, and the market is either going to say, yeah, it's worth it or it's not worth it. But the fact that I've raised my prices as a producer of some item or some service, that doesn't in and of itself create inflation. Inflation is just basically more money coming into circulation than there was. And the only way that money can be brought into circulation is by the government bringing it there, however they do that. If you and I were to say, you know what, let's print some more money, that's what they call counterfeiting. And we would go to prison for a long, long time. But this is not a new problem. This is not a new phenomena. It's not just our government that's doing this. It's all governments that have done this. And it's governments that have done this, not just in the present, but even in the past. Back in the day, way back in the day in the Roman Empire. And for those of you who are on social media and you see these memes about how often do you think about the Roman Empire, I think about the Roman Empire quite often, quite frankly, but that's another story for another time. But even back then, as things were getting less good in the Roman Empire, they started shaving the coins that they printed or minted in order to create more money. Back then, they didn't have paper money, right? They didn't have digital currency like credit cards, where it's all in space and, in the cloud and whatever it is. They had actual coins, and the coins weighed something. Back in the day here in the United States, we had the same thing, right? We had silver dollars. They were actually made out of silver. that's awesome. If you can find some, that's cool. But back then, the way they inflated the currency was that they literally started shaving the edges off of the coins that were in circulation in the empire, and they used that copper or that silver or that gold or whatever that rare earth metal was. They used that to make more coins, and so they produced more currency into the economy, and in doing that, it made all the currency worth less. It's very simple supply and demand. If there's only, easy math, if there's only 100 of these whatever, then the value of that 100 is established by the market. And if there is suddenly another 10, so a 10% increase, now there's 110 of these items, whatever they may be, suddenly they're not as valuable because there's just more of them. And this, to a certain degree, is what is behind the surge of valuation for Bitcoin. I'm not a cryptocurrency person. I'm not a Bitcoin person. I'm not here to mine crypto and to sell Bitcoin or any of that stuff. But the thing about Bitcoin that people really, really like attach to is that it is a locked system. And there's only, I believe, 21 million coins. I think that's the number. There's only 21 million of them. There will never be more than 21 million of them. You can't create more. You can't print more. Now, you can make other cryptocurrencies, Dogecoin or Luna, or I forget all the ones. Like I said, it's not my space, but you can create, you can use the technology to make other coins. But if you want Bitcoin, there's only 21 million. If you want US dollars, there's however many we've got, plus however many more the Treasury prints. Like, they literally print dollars, right? You've seen it. It's cool. The machine just stacks sheets of $100 bills and cuts them and prints them and binds them and whatnot. There's always the ability to print more. And so our inflation is driven in large part, in total, really, by what our government spends and what they continue to spend. And the fact that they have kind of taken the restrictions off and they've eliminated the spending cap and the budget cap for the next year and a half means that they can basically go wild and spend whatever they want. There's no one there to stop them. And this is all politicians. It's not your guys and my guys. Forget about all that. I'm not here to tell you that there's some, difference in this. They're all, at some point, they're all using our tax dollars for their programs, their benefits, their whatever. And so until that is brought under control, they're really, whatever the Fed's doing, it's just kind of a drop in the ocean because the government continues to do what they do. So let me see where we are. Holy moly, we're running out of time fast. I apologize. That was a lot longer of a description than I expected, but I hope it makes sense. And I hope that you guys are not upset with me for being the bearer of less than great news, because again, it's not about politics. It's not your politicians or my politicians. It's our government and the system that we have. So how do we work through this? What does all this mean? Like, there's still people buying homes. I got clients writing offers right now. I've got clients receiving or accepting or getting their offers accepted right now, which is awesome. And there's a lot of things, like I'm talking to some of my referral partners and trying to help them frame the offer in the right way. And even people that I've been talking to for a long time about this don't get how great the opportunity can be to be a buyer in this market, even at interest rates in the high 7s to low 8% range on the 30-year fixed. And so when we're talking to clients, everyone wants a deal. And I get that. I want a deal also. But I want you to think about what is a good deal and what is a great deal. So I have a client, for example, her offer was accepted today, actually yesterday, I apologize. She, without going into details, the house was on the market for $950,000. She wanted to buy it for $918,500. So she wanted to give them, she wanted to buy it for $917,500. So she wanted to give them a pretty significant haircut, $32,000 decrease in price. And what I said to her is, instead of asking for a lower price, offer them the full amount that they're asking, but then ask for that $32,500 in credits. And what that does for you is we can use that credit as a 3-2-1 buy down, right? That 3-2-1 buy down is going to end up costing about $21,000 and change. I don't have all the numbers in front of me. $21,000 and change for the buy down. So $32,000 in credit, $11,000 of that goes to pay closing costs and prepaids. That's $11,000 out of this client's pocket that doesn't leave her pocket. She doesn't have to pay for title insurance, escrow services, appraisal, etc. That stays in her bank account. The seller's paying for that. With the remaining $21,000, we're setting up a 3-2-1 buy down for her. And what that does, I got notes right here, so let me read this to you. So at her interest rate, which is 7.75, at the original, her plan for a loan, a purchase price of $917,500, her principal and interest was going to be $3,349. She's putting down a pretty big down payment, but still $3,349 is what she was going to pay every month on a 30-year fixed for a $917,000 purchase price. What I suggested was pay the full $949,000 what the seller was asking, and we're going to use the money to buy down the interest rate for the first 3 years of your ownership. So in year number 1, her interest rate is not, or her payment is not based on a 7.75% interest rate. It's based on a 4.75% interest rate. So her principal and interest payment for year number 1 is $2,603. That is a difference. That is a savings of $746 a month. Real money that she is not spending on her mortgage because the seller credit is paying for that. So if she would have given them a haircut and just lowered the purchase price, monthly payment, month in, month out, even based on the lower purchase price, would be $3,349. But taking that same amount that she would have used from the credit, from the reduction of the purchase price, I should say, and applying that as a 3-2-1 buy down credit, she is saving $700 a month in payment, $746 to be exact, from what her payment would have been if she had just lowered the purchase price. Now, here's the thing. She's got more savings coming for year number 2 and year number 1. Somewhere in the next 3 years, whatever the Fed is doing, whatever our government is doing, we will have a refinance opportunity. And we're going to refinance this client. And when we do, whatever money has not been used by the buy down, because we've got 36 months of payments that have been bought down by the seller credit. If we refinance her month 13 into her ownership of this home, she's going to get 23 months of seller credit from the buy down applied to reduce her principal. So it's the best of both worlds. And I know that that's a lot. There's a lot of math there. There's a lot of numbers there. I don't have a screen that I can write down on and whatnot. But what I want y'all to do, what I'm begging you to do, please call me. Let's sit down. Let me teach you how to use this market for your and your buyer's advantage. Even if you're a seller or a listing broker and you have sellers who are thinking, maybe we should cut the price to get more buyer activity. Rather than do that, talk to me. Let me show you how you can reduce, keep the seller's proceeds the same, whether they reduce the price or they create a credit for this buy down. Let me show you just how much more attractive we can make this situation for potential buyers. It's hard to do without actual pen and paper. It's hard to do without really running the numbers. But if we can connect either in person, on the phone, through a Zoom class, one-on-one, me and your buyer, me and your seller, whatever the case may be, let me show you the power of the 3-2-1 or the 2-1 buy down. It is something that makes this market a lot more palatable, because in time, despite the shenanigans of our government and despite the ineptitude of the Federal Reserve and all of the other central bankers, in time, things will normalize and stabilize. They always do. What the 3-2-1 buy down does is it gives us and our buyers time with lower payment and less pressure, and so that we can wait it out. And when things do improve, we refinance, and whatever money they have left over in their account from the buy down gets applied to their principal. It's the best deal in town, and it's really waiting for you. Just call me, reach me. I will walk you through all the details. I'll crunch all the numbers for you. I'll show you everything you need to know, and I'll help you get more deals. So please don't be a stranger. Don't be shy. Until then, and until next time, I'll see you next Thursday. But before then, I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane. And if you're in the Pacific Northwest, stay warm and dry, because autumn is coming. And I want to thank you guys for watching this 30-Minute Thursday. I will see you next week. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.